no stars. Out here we is stoned, immaculate.
Hello and welcome. This is the C86 show. I'm David Eastaugh. As you know, we love a special guest. This week it's going to be the turn of the singer-songwriter Simon Finn, who I spoke to very recently to find out more about life, love and poetry. Made a classic cult album in 1970, Pass the Distance, and then had a long period where he didn't play music, but then has recorded quite a few albums recently, and I will give you the link to his website in the notes below. But anyway, this is the interview. So just one thing, that what he was using was an iPad. It wasn't brilliant, but if you're keen to know more about Simon Finn, then listen in very tightly, otherwise it might be a little bit tricky at times. But anyway, the interview's all there and it's rather charming, so do enjoy. But yes, as I always do, early musical influences. Simon, tell us more.
I don't know, but well, mine would be conventional. It's funny you talk about David Eastaugh, because actually we both started our career in the same venue, really, or the first tiny little break you get, like, which is a club called the Marquee it was on Wardour Street in London at the time, and its laboratory wall was just fantastic. You kind of knew something magical had to happen to you, because when you went there, I just wonder what happened to that, because the club's gone now, but that lavatory wall, you had every signature from that. I mean, anybody who plays there, you're so excited that you just want to put your signature along with, Keith Richards and David Howard and everybody else, But yeah, that was kind of the place. I mean, in my case, actually, which is true for Bowie too. It was just a sort of solo thing. I was opening for Al Stewart at the time. Who was just sort of, and it went sort of okay, actually. So I did, I think, like maybe 5 weeks of opening for Al Stewart on Wednesday. Wednesday night was the folk night.
Yes.
We got put into, and it was very different stuff than Past the Distance. But
And were your parents at all musical, or had any influence on your sort of direction in life at that stage? Because you were born 1951?
1951, yeah. Parents, yeah. Well, one way or another, I guess they always had like some kind of influence on you. But in my case, they both kind of sort of fucked off. So they were both actors. So I mean, other than genetic, I can't really say that they had much influence on me.
No.
I did kind of get to know, or try to get to know my father, as everybody seems to do for some reason, regardless. It's just that curious, isn't it? Sort of, I guess it's some kind of animal thing, because, I mean, there isn't really much logic to it. I mean, if a friend fucked off and you didn't see him for 20 years, you probably wouldn't go to that much trouble to look them up. But somehow, because they've sort of been responsible in some way of getting you to this, dubious delight, then...
So did you say your parents were both actors?
Yeah.
God,
my mother actually was quite well known as a sort of TV 50s. She was very big in the 50s when television first started.
What was her name?
Pamela Russell. And there is a book on her. But television was a different sort of thing, because actually she was an actress before, but she became more famous after she became a paraplegic, because I guess she had a pleasant speaking voice, and in that early days of TV, she did a sort of, I think, like a children's show, but she also did like, sort of reading Keats and Milton and stuff like for an hour, which wouldn't go down so well nowadays, I don't think. But so yeah, there were a few
Yes.
few things. I can't remember the name of them because of course I was barely born,
Yes. So Pamela Russell. And what was your dad's name?
He was Malcolm Russell. He was sort of a very good actor, actually. I did see him act, but he was sort of in the Shakespearean type live theatre.
Right. Yes.
Well, and so you'll never, you can't find him at all. He's gone now.
He's gone, but your mum, I'll have to look out for the book, actually. Did you have any older brothers or sisters or cousins? Because they often have a massive influence on one's life.
No, because I guess I was 2 when my mother became a paraplegic, which occurred because of a riding accident. And so no more children. And I got brought up by my grandparents, in fact.
Yes. God, that's quite a horrendous experience for everybody, I guess. Yeah, gee.
Well, I don't know. It could have been a lot worse. I could have been brought up by her. I mean, it wasn't. I don't think either of my parents would have made perfect. I think it. As life goes. I mean, my childhood. I won't say I enjoyed it, but nobody was sort of buggering me with a fire hose or doing anything hideous, and it sort of went by, and I actually left home when I was 15.
Yes, well, that's always good not to get buggered by a hose when you're young. That's Yeehaw for a good childhood. Yeah, so then you got to 15. This was like kind of mid-60s now. Had you started to develop any interest in, well, you obviously was opening for Al Stewart.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was always had sort of some kind of interest in music. And I probably wrote my first sort of complete song when I was 12, which actually nearly got turned into a single called "Good Morning to You." Sort of, as you can imagine, a 12-year-old talking about a blackbird. But it did. When they put out the Past the Distance as a re-release, the first CD, I think, threw it in as a bonus track, as they call it. I'm always surprised it didn't get taken up as a sort of cornflake advertisement or something. It's quite catchy.
Yes. And had you already developed quite an interest then in sort of writing and playing guitar at this stage, at a very young age?
Yeah, I was pretty obsessive from the time I was about 11 on, I guess. Obsessive like people were back then, I mean, because things were a little more precious, albums cost kind of a fair bit of your pocket money. You had to save a bit to get them, and when you did, you kind of played them over and over. And if you're 11, you try and work out how they play everything on it.
Yes, it's interesting how many people from that generation, your generation, sort of would play. Well, it's the same with buying a single, which took months of saving up the money to get 79p to buy a single. But a lot of musicians would play singles very slowly and try and work out the chords on their cheap guitar to sort of learn how to put a song in.
absolutely. And in fact, I mean, I made, how, how I survived in London was really, I learned pretty well every Beatles song there was, and, would go to, uh, there were various clubs, and, you'd sort of sit on a stool and play, just play songs all night.
Yes.
And
So,
then they'd put money in a hat at the end of the evening, like
so when you hit 15, you left school. Did you then sort of
well,
move?
to be fair, it was closer to 16. I was just 15.
Yeah.
I timed it so that I figured, because if you were under 16, they could actually uh, they can whatever make you a ward of court. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah,
Right.
in those days, and so I timed it because I figured, they'd take a while to actually get me, and by then and when you're over 16, they can't make you a ward of court. I think
Yeah.
you're even allowed to join the army. Not that that was one of my first choices, but yeah.
No, absolutely. So when you left, school, did you also leave home and go to London at this stage?
Yeah, I mean, I was at a boarding school, and so I left the boarding school just having saved, money for actually quite a long time, about a year and a half,
Yes.
uh, saving a whole bunch of money, which went in the quickest time you can. I think I'd saved, I can't remember now, it was 20 or 30 pounds, whatever it was. It would be the equivalent of many hundreds now, and it seemed like an absolute fortune to me. And I thought, well, that's it. I can go to London, and I think within a week I was sleeping on the park bench. It just disappeared. It was just astonishing, like the speed with which you. But anyway, yeah. Luckily, it was it was not going into winter; it was going into summer. So.
Yes. So from then, I'm just trying to sort of work out. Then, were you influenced by that kind of beat generation, sort of beatnik, the CND movement, or were you veering towards the sort of summer of love and the counterculture at this stage in the 60s?
I was, in terms of early musical influences, it would be the Kinks, the Yardbirds, and the Beatles, really, in terms of just, I liked, particularly like the Kinks and the Beatles, because not the Beatles, not their sort of 63 thing, but at the time that their, their lyrics became, really quite both interesting and often reasonably profound. I mean, as pop songs go, but I think that there was many of the songs have a real poetry to them, and Ray Davies, yeah, I mean, he was hugely influential because it was within one's power with a guitar to play what he did and what he continued to do really for most of his life. If you play the chords, you can knock out the lyrics. Like and, yeah. So
So,
yeah, no, I wasn't I wasn't as affected by which you always read. The sort of the people really focused on the blues and this, that, and the other, and that wasn't really my thing. I guess I always liked the way lyrics sort of fitted and told a story and scanned. And I mean, I used to. It's probably quite bizarre, but I used to love My Fair Lady when I was a
yes.
kid. probably more than my grandparents, just because I just love the construction of the songs and the way that the way that the lyrics had sort of fitted into the Shaw's story. I mean, I thought it was a work of genius.
Yes, absolutely. So how did you get your support slot for Al Stewart? Was this kind of mid-60s?
I got it. So, I mean, the thing about being on the benches is you don't have anything else to do all day but walk into people's offices. It was a different time. I mean, it would be, I don't suppose you could get into reception now. They'd be sort of on the 10th floor and you wouldn't. But in those days, you could bang on doors, and probably 9 out of 10 times they wouldn't see you, but 1 out of 10 the person go, you've got 5, and you go in and you knock out, a few songs.
Yes.
And his name was Guest. I'm trying to remember can't remember his first name, but it was something Guest was the person who was putting Al Stewart on, and I got to him some way or other, and played him a bunch of songs that he thought, might work, I guess, with Al, as an opening for Al, and the first night went really well in terms of the audience was, very positive. So I just got invited back.
Yes.
Other things. He was actually very good. I mean, he's a few years older than me. Probably not like Keith Richards, but I would say he's probably at least 5 years older than me. So I was really young. I was 16 when I was doing this. And he was probably, 20 or 22, something in that range. And, I only had like the soft string guitar that I was sort of had with me on the benches. And so he actually let me use his electric guitar, which I wasn't used to. And of course, I'd always play with the tuning, and
Yes.
it would drive him completely nuts. But to be fair, people were really pretty decent back then, I have to say. Like it was, there were a lot of people who were, bearing in mind I was a sort of annoying little 16-year-old who was just pushing myself wherever I could. A lot of people were really quite decent. Bert Jantz was another person who was really very decent and helpful, and gave suggestions of places to go. Really, that's all I did. Wherever I could squeeze myself in free at some pub or whatever show, and I just sort of try and sort of hit people, and
Yes.
see if anything could happen.
And did you see Mr. Bowie at that stage? Because I know he was he'd been in various bands, but was also doing.
I never ever, other than it's only because I read that he had to, that he did a little sort of a folk show at the Marquee, and I actually, oddly enough, it's one of those things. I read that because in Japan, and I don't know why, I'm rather popular, much more so than the UK. And they were doing a book on Dave Bowie, and they wanted me to write. They wanted me to write like a few pages, and of course, I know his stuff, but it was hard to come up with
A story, yes.
what I'm supposed to write, what my connection with him is. And although I think a lot of his stuff is really wonderful, it's very, very different. And I certainly was not, part of that particular type of music at that time, But anyway, because of that, I ended up looking him up, and then I found out that he'd actually started out at the Marquee as well.
Yes. But I think, I suppose with a lot of people, it didn't always happen straight away, in the terms of the album or the tour or any form of success. I think he had about 5 years before things started to sort of...
Is. It just always is,
There's a certain apprenticeship, isn't there, really?
Well, in those days, getting an album done was the thing you aspired to, or getting a record done, I should say. You usually, God knows how they past the distance, made it, but it's usually a single, and I was always pushing. I had a couple of singles that almost got done. In other words, you used to bang on people's doors like Polydor or whatever it was. As I said, about 1 in 10 would allow you in, and then if they actually thought that there was something there, very different to now, they would actually make a demo. Like they would tell you to turn up at a studio on a certain date and time, and you turn up there, and they would have hired like session musicians, a couple that you were supposed to tell them what to do. I hadn't the faintest idea. I'd never worked with anybody in my life, but you just sort of
yes.
do what try and get into the spirit of it. But yeah, it was a very different process. But you weren't always dismissed, which you would be now, out of hand. I think I guess because they'd been wrong enough times, and it was a new kind of thing that was opening up. Almost all the people who made it had been refused by people. And so I think a lot of the execs were, at that time, looking for what might happen. Well, indeed, I guess the guy who did me, or the label was Mushroom, was not a big label. It was sort of the equivalent of John Peel's Dandelion in terms of size. But yeah, I mean, Vic obviously thought that. He'd seen me in my earlier sort of Al Stewart type time, so in '67 or something.
Yes.
Then his company had gone bankrupt, and then I just bumped into him in '69, and he just started Chalk Farm Studios, which mainly survived actually on reggae, not making records, but renting out the studio to reggae artists.
Yes, because with and this is a guy called Vic Kerry, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that was a label that was started then. So yes, so you were virtually one of the first people to be signed to it, really, weren't you?
The first, yeah. His first error, his first mistake was me.
Yes, but he did also have
many others. But it does have Ravi Shankar on it.
It does have Ravi Shankar, and also another guy who used to come to East Anglia, the fairs and festivals, called Lowell Coxhill, which was I think he's a jazz saxophonist, isn't he, as well?
I don't know, because shortly afterwards, you see, I actually left for Canada. So I think 73 or 74, I was gone.
Yes. So, what can you remember much about the recording session for the album "Past the Distance"? Because this has got over 10 tracks, and Vic was the one who produced and engineered it. Was he?
Yeah, he was basically he was really an engineer. I think in terms of producing, this would be, he sort of in terms of the financial side of producing, I think Vic was not really a great financial manager, which doesn't, affect affect you much as an artist, but I think I think he was always, you know, inclined towards financial disasters. But I remember, like, he did tell me once that John Peel and he were looking at one of their acts, whether it was me or one of John Peel's, I don't know, but John Peel leant into him and said, the only truly unknowable in life, Vic, is which one of us is going to go bankrupt first.
Yes.
I don't know I don't know the answer to that, actually. I'm not sure whether Dandelion went or Mushroom went first.
So with the songs on the album, had they been rehearsed and obviously played by you, but with the band, were they just brought in to the studio for the recording session?
Yeah, we did. It's one of those odd things. I mean, I sort of recorded some songs, and Vic sort of put the idea to me that I might get a group. And oddly enough, that his studio was exactly opposite the Roundhouse. And at that particular time, the Roundhouse had a sort of cafe, a very sort of hippie, open cafe thing, as well as shows going on. And in this very large, spacious area, people just sort of hung out and played music and, you know, very sort of loose, almost like sort of little mini festival atmosphere. You know, some people were going to shows, other people were just sort of hanging out. Anyway, so I happened to be in there, and I played. I was playing some songs, and David Eastaugh and Paul Burwell were working there, or at least one of them was working there. One of them, and so that's when I met them. And Vic wanted to do a show somewhere, which would have been my first show for that kind of thing, you know, for Past the Distance type song.
Yes.
So he'd hired some space above a pub. It's called the Enterprise, actually. It too is in short form. And so, yeah, a whole load of people turned up, quite unexpected, because I'd invited David and Paul, but I hadn't quite realized they were into extremely sort of offbeat jazz, very marginal kind of sound stuff, probably way beyond my ken. And I was laughing about that with David, actually, like a year or two ago. We were talking because he couldn't remember either, but David and Paul turned up, but so did a saxophonist and yet another drummer. And the drummer was clearly very, very adult and in the middle of an acid trip or something. He sort of was arbitrarily banging sticks on not drums, thank heaven, but weird little items. Paul was playing drums, and David was playing guitar, and the saxophonist, he just sort of blasted away. I think he was high as a kite. Anyway, we did the show. The audience, were polite but probably stunned, since I was largely doing sort of folk stuff, but I guess it lent something to it. And after that, I asked Dick what he thought about the group. he said, well, maybe we could go with like Paul and David. And so, I invited them to come to the studio. I thought it was because they were hugely attracted to my music, but David ruthlessly, honestly told me, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago when we first sort of met up again, like that what attracted him was that Vic had the first eight-track studio in London.
Right.
He really wanted to be part of it. So yeah, but it was certainly fun, and it was done the way a lot of people did stuff then. You know, it was done really live. You know, I mean, it's not like we went over things over and over again. Well, it's pretty apparent that, you know, when you listen to that particular album, there wasn't a lot of rehearsal going on. I mean, you know, I'd play my songs, but we were playing them together. You know, like I mean, there's few things added after, but you know, David was playing his guitar and Paul was playing drums while I was singing and playing rhythm guitar.
Yes. Just what? And did David also do the album cover as well?
Yes. When you say did, what happened was, I mean, I had the title of the album, which I liked, you know, Past the Distance. And Vic had asked me if I had anything in mind for the cover. And at that time, there was a huge billboard, and I don't know whether you're old enough to remember, but there was a company called Start Right Shoes, and they had a shoe advertisement that is almost identical to my album cover.
Right.
And so I sort of pulled Vic by his sweater and out the studio and pointed at this sort of huge billboard of a Start Right shoe advertisement and said, "I'd like that." And of course, you know, what am I? I mean, you know, I'm just a kid. I have no idea, you know, legalities are completely nothing that I'd ever thought of. I just thought that seems completely appropriate for passing the distance. And so Vic said, "Yeah, good idea." And David was going to art school at the time. So Vic said, "Well, maybe we can get David to sort of draw it up, you know." And that's exactly what David did. You know, he drew it up, and then he had him coming back on the other side. And there it is. And unfortunately, that's what I mean about Vic being innocent in some respects, because you know that caused the album to be removed. You know, like I mean, it was out. You know, it was in the shop for a year or something, or maybe less. And I guess some Clark, which was a bigger company then. You know, they were really quite a big children's shoe company, and I guess they saw that, and they didn't want their name associated with my kind of album. So they wrote a letter. And,
right. That
Daily Mirror did a little story on it actually, which was quite cute. Whether that helped it sort of help Vic unload bootleg albums or not, I don't know.
Yes.
It got taken out the shop. But...
Yes, a bit of a shame, really. And with certain tracks, can you remember how Jerusalem came together, the song Jerusalem, because that's kind of one of the highlights on the album?
Yeah. When you say remember how it came together.
Yes, the inspiration.
Where I wrote it, or
yeah, and how it developed.
You know, it came completely out of the ether. I was indeed tripping on at the time that I wrote it, and I just basically played the whole thing, and to a few friends at the time who were not, they were just in the living room, and it just came, and as happens sometimes, because a lot of stuff well, I don't know, I always rather like the hallucinogenics, like I found them quite useful, but it's not a guaranteed thing. You look the next morning and something seemed wonderful just seemed like less so in the light of day, and other things work.
Yes.
And that one sort of worked for me. So yeah, I guess I probably just polished it up a little, but most of it, lyrics and song, were written, pretty immediately. And then, and really, I guess it is because that was the song that I played for Vic when, because I tried the door to people who at that point sort of would let me in because they liked stuff I'd done before, but they didn't like it at all. They wanted kind of like dominated the type of stuff I was writing previously, and so Vic was the first one where I played it, and his face sort of screwed up, and I was just waiting for the usual rejection, and then he said, "Kind of different to your earlier stuff. Do you have any others?" and actually, at that point, I did have Big White Car, which wasn't written on drugs at all. That was just, another song, but it had a similar kind of, I guess, angst to it. And,
Yes.
And so on the basis of those two songs, we said, yeah, let's do it. And,
that was it. And how did there was another track on it, Very Close Friends, the opening song. Can you remember, did this one come about in the same way, or was that a slightly different process?
That one, it's very, very short. It's just the opening. And I think it was just my experimentation with an open tuning, because oddly enough, none of the other songs are actually in any open tuning. They're just in regular chord tuning. But that one is, and I think I was just sort of fooling around, I don't remember specifically where. Some songs I do remember specifically, like where they came, but that one was a doodle. A doodle.
Yes. I'm just curious on the last track I'll ask about that album, Laughing Till Tomorrow. How did this one sort of develop?
It's funny you should mention that, because really weirdly, just 2 weeks ago, I've been waiting, the only nowadays, as you probably are aware, I used to, thank heavens it's paid off now, but I used to pay my mortgage with, CDs, CD sales.
Yes.
And music, radio stuff. And, it's gone, it's like, 20th or less than what it is, So it was a source of some delight and astonishment that, I'd just been waiting for somebody, as I said, to go for good morning to you, a cornflake ad, anything to keep my retirement in place. But it's the song you mentioned. I think that they just got the. Which song did you just say?
Laughing Till Tomorrow.
Yes, I think that's the one that they just. That's the one that they just. Some quite decent sized film company just bought the sync rights for their film.
Oh.
Set in the 60s. which is a huge relief for me. But I mean, it has two things. One is you do get a few thousand, and secondly, if you're lucky, other directors sort of see that and then think, oh, maybe. But as the song goes, I mean, it's not one that I would have, as you say, Jerusalem is sort of the most sort of known. But anyway,
Yes.
there you go. That one. They do have to actually use it, but I think there's a good. They've written the scene. They showed me the synopsis, and they've written the scene around it. So with a young girl singing along to it. So as long as they use it.
Yes. Well, I know. I think Nick Lowe did very well on the song "Peace, Love, and Understanding" that got put on a soundtrack that became, I think it was The Bodyguard or something like that, and it became the biggest selling record of all time of soundtracks. So his retirement was well and truly sorted. So there you go.
Yeah,
so
I don't think my retirement will be sorted in the same way. But,
yes.
Anyway, it was a source of some joy. Anyway.
Yes, absolutely. So when the album came out, obviously, huge excitement. You have the album. Do you then do some live dates on your own as the headline act?
Yeah, but we did a few shows, but we didn't really do very many. We didn't really do very many shows. I mean, everybody was sort of struggling in their own way, I guess. And nobody had any money for that place in the country where you could spend a week writing the next album. I did write the music for a play at the ICA that then didn't happen.
Oh, right. What play's this?
Well, I can remember what it was about. I can't remember the name. I was trying to see if David would remember it, but he couldn't. I just got irritated with the director, so I left. And also he fired. There was a cast. I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 people in it, and one of them was an actor who recommended me, and then he fired that particular actor. I didn't leave immediately, but it seemed like a sort of a thing. But then I sort of found him rather irritating. And,
yes.
But truth be told, I was probably the irritating one. Again, I think I was probably 19 at the time, and just sort of obsessive in my own way, and sort of if I wanted to do something some way, then I'm sure it could be very annoying to a director. But yeah, the play was about. I don't think it would be done now, but it was about a white guy who ate melons or some watermelons turned into a black guy or something, and therefore had to experience that thing. Maybe Watermelon Man. I can't remember now. It was a weird sort of thing.
Yes.
I don't think it would be. I don't think it would be done now. Not because it would seem naive. I think.
Yes.
By today's standards, but I mean, it wasn't politically incorrect. It would just seem very naive approach, I think, to the subject.
Yes. I don't. It doesn't sound like one that one would. It was an art house movie. So this is the early 70s. Things are trucking on. The 60s clearly came a bit to a crashing end with the death of people like Hendrix, Morrison, Janis Joplin, Brian Jones had died, Altamont, the Beatles had split up. And then you'll bring your album out, you do the music for that play that obviously doesn't go anywhere. Then what happens to you on the next stage of your life, on the music? Did you say you moved to Canada?
I did. Well, I did try. What was his name? I got in amazingly through somebody or other to the guy who produced the early Kinks.
Shell. I didn't.
Is it Nick Avery or something like? No, that's the guy in the thing. What?
So I did an interview.
Shel Talmley, that was his name. Shel
Yes, I did an interview with him.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, I'm sure he would not recall me from a hole in the wall because I think I only met him 3 times. But somebody had some person who bought some studio who sort of liked my album or something had sent me along to see him. But at that time, I got heavily involved in sort of the open tuning kind of thing, and also a lot sort of open tuning and a little more in the Jerusalem vein.
Yes.
When I played that to Tomley, he didn't like it at all, and he said, "Do you have any other stuff?" And I played him some of my regular stuff, and he said, "Oh, that's sort of interesting." And we did have another meeting, but then he got, either he left that company or that company left him, whatever it was. He was no longer there anymore. So I had about 3 meetings with him, but that was it. And I think that sort of burned me out a bit because, I had been really sort of struggling for quite a few years, and I was a little bit, I was probably a little bit like that in terms of personal shit, just in terms of I just sort of got to know both my parents a bit, and that had really backfired rather poorly. So, and the combination of that and the album having been taken off after a year. So I went to Canada initially just to sort of explore it. I just went to what was supposed to be a few months, but I really loved it. I found the people much easier to talk to. I mean, people may think the 60s were really sort of open and this, that, and the other, and there were aspects of it that really were. As I said, a lot of musicians were really very decent and helpful to me when I, had absolutely nothing and no contact at all, because I didn't know anybody in London when I came at all. But England as a culture, and I think it's still a little that way, I'm too old really now to notice, but I think they have a hard time sort of saying what they think in the same way. Well, people say North Americans, but actually I went and lived in Spain, and there I found the people easy and outgoing as well. To give some idea, when I moved to London, I think it took me about 5 years to build up a circle of friends. And when I went to Montreal, I didn't know a soul either, and it probably took me 5 weeks.
Right.
And I'm not an outgoing person. I'm slightly shy. I'm outgoing when I know people. I'm not. I can probably be annoyingly verbal if I know people, but in terms of sort of making my way with strangers, I'm not like an extroverted person really. And despite that, within 5 weeks, I built up a circle of friends in Montreal, but were not really superficial. I mean, many of them have lasted the whole of my life. I, that, I'd say, is a harder proposition in
Yes.
the UK. As an example, I've been here now over 10 years in Colchester. People are friendly, in terms of neighbours and this, that, the other. But whereas in many other places, if you invite people round for coffee or a glass of wine, because you've enjoyed talking to them in some way, they come.
Yes.
And that doesn't happen really here. Or I have to presume that, otherwise I have to presume make people very, very nervous. But I don't think it's that. I think it's just cultural. I don't take it personally. I just realize, you can meet them at a pub or this, that, and the other. But in terms of, pop by, have a bite to eat, that sort of thing that happens in Italy or Spain or North America,
Yes.
Whether it's the States or Canada, like it's sort of fluid and quite easy. Maybe it's different in Norwich because, I had a neighbour over the road and she just moved to Norwich and people are really friendly.
Right, yes. I think it depends on regions as well. I think there's areas which, are very of a type, and perhaps that's the thing that works. Yeah, interesting, really. Yes, you'll have to visit Norwich and get a vibe of it. So then what happens? Because obviously, a few people, when they're in a musical moment in their life, will bang out sort of, I don't know, a few albums in 5 years. In my kind of, I don't know, interviews, mostly they have a bit of a 5-year honeymoon. They get their sort of music together in about 12 months, and in the 70s and 80s, John Peel was always the person that would play a track, and then they'd get a John Peel session, then a first album, the second album, bit of touring, and then by the third album, they were all a bit exhausted. But do you just sort of like quit at this stage and think, and just have a completely different journey?
Yeah, as I say, I wouldn't blame music for that. I would blame my own internal demons. But like I when I got to Canada, I really enjoyed the people and the life there, and so I went to Canada. I might have done other things, but as it happened, I met a woman who had a farm, an organic farm, and I went on a farm and did organic farming like that. So I was really quite removed. I mean, we're still friends. It only lasted 5 years, but back then that was long for me.
Yes.
And we remained friends. But yeah, so I did organic farming and other things. I taught karate because I'd done karate since I was a child, which was oddly enough actually unusual then. Because Bruce Lee didn't exist when I was.
No, we Bruce Lee, Eva Knievel, Muhammad Ali, but all our sort of childhood people, weren't they?
Yeah, and I started that when I was 13, and amazingly, it's hard to believe now, but in the early 70s, having your black belt, it was almost like having a dentist degree, because wherever I went, there weren't many people to teach, and it had become overnight because of all of those people, like incredibly popular. So every college, like every place was looking for, for teachers.
Yes. Oh my God. So there you go.
So even when I was doing the organic farm thing, I managed to, teach karate at a local college. Later at McGill, I taught.
So did you come back? Did you come back to England in the sort of mid to late 70s then?
I used to come back periodically just to visit friends for a week or two, but I never came back to live.
No. There you go. So then, as the decades rolled by, what happens when you decide to record another album. This is Magic Moments. Is that the next time that you'll get into a recording studio?
It isn't, but in terms of from the public point of view, yes, it would be. I actually did do stuff, other stuff, like I had my little 80s thing, but I never managed to get it released anywhere. But I made like sort of EPs, as demos that were very 80s really. But then just the sheer chance that it's sort of all very peculiar now because these are all just very common words. But in 2002 or something like that, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine. She was a documentary filmmaker in Montreal, and she was talking about selling a wood stove on eBay. And she said, "Well, the guy asked if he could take me out to lunch. What do you think about that?" And I said, "I dream of having eBay experiences like that. Nobody's ever asked me out to lunch." And she said, "Yeah, well, I Googled him, and he seemed all right." And I'd never heard that expression, you see. I mean, if you've never heard the word, it sounds almost intriguingly, hazardous.
Yes.
Like sexually degenerate or something. And he was Googling involved.
I Googled him. Yes, I know.
And so, obviously she described it to me, and I said, "Okay, I'm going to call you back in 10. I'm going to Google."
Yes.
Google and so then, I did, and to my astonishment, there were, hundreds of entries, and so I went back, and so that was really the beginning of it, because at that point I actually wrote again, having found this Google thing. I then found David Eastaugh, who had written books and stuff, and so he was quite Googleable, and
Yes.
so I wrote to him and said, "Hi, David, it's been a very long time. I was just curious about like all this stuff on past the distance." And he wrote back and said, "There's a lot of people looking for you. Do you want to be found?"
Right.
So I can give you, he said, that I don't know them personally, but they're friends of friends. And I can forward your email if you want me to. And I said, "Yeah, sure. I mean, why not?" And one of those earlier ones, I mean, there were at that point, suddenly, my email at that point, I used to maybe get like probably 5 a week, if that, and they were sort of friends in Australia and things like that. And suddenly there were many hundreds that suddenly arrived, and one of them was from David Tibet, who was in a group, oddly enough, 7, your name minus, plus 7. It was C93, current 93.
Oh, yes. Current 93. So they came...
They called themselves C93. So it was sort of amusing to see yours was C86.
Yes, this is true, actually. So Stephen was your man.
Tibet, his name is, David Tibet.
Oh, yes, David Tibet, and then there's Stephen Stapleton as well, isn't there?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Stephen Stapleton. He wasn't in Current 93, though. He was in Kind of Company, 80s kind of name anyway.
So Stephen was in a band called Nurse with Wound.
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
And Throbbing Gristle. Was he part of Throbbing Gristle? Anyway,
I don't know. I couldn't, because this is your era. You see, I never knew any of these people. I didn't know any of them at all. But
so
David
yes,
was obsessed with it at that time, and so he continued to write obsessively about Past Resistance, and he wanted to re-release it on his label, so which ended up happening.
yes. So that was to do right. So that's when Magic. So does he reissue Past the Distance? Has that been reissued on his label, or was it just Magic Moments that comes out on his label?
Magic Moments really was mainly me, like Centre One, but that we put both on it. But no, he re-released Past the Distance, but for which I gave not unique rights, because I'm sort of old school, like in terms of like song rights and all of that stuff. So, but yeah, he re-released the first of the CDs, but there have been many others. His was an unlimited CD release. Then there've been a few limited CD releases and a few unlimited CD releases, and now of course it's on some huge fucking label that, like all huge labels, never fucking pay you, which is always annoying.
Yes.
Called Viaduct or something like that. Superior Viaduct. Yeah, I mean they put out thousands of things, but he has a reputation of not paying anybody. But on the other hand, you're in the company of, all sort of old jazz guys and Burt Jansch and everybody else, so that you get a sort of kudos. I guess that's what your payment is. But yeah, I mean, it's an unlimited thing. They keep selling thousands of them, and they just never pay you.
Yes. That is very annoying. So when suddenly Magic Moments happens, you become incredibly prolific at this stage, don't you? There's Accidental Life, Rats Laugh.
Well, because I went back on the road and my whole life was music again suddenly. So yeah, it was really quite an enjoyable period. I would say for 10 years I was working pretty constantly, either recording or doing live shows. And also, I did play with that band, Current 93, for a few years as well, just playing guitar. Like that.
Yes.
So, yeah, quite a busy period.
And you do also sort of become something of a cult star, I guess, isn't it? This is one of your things that happens in later life.
Well, I mean, I think the best thing to be said is, there's probably not that many people in the world who like my stuff, but the people who do like it sort of really like it, which I guess it's one of those lucky things. I mean, I haven't, out of all the sort of live shows, I haven't had any, you always expect to be absolutely slated or something, and for sure, some shows you do better than others, but actually, the people who come do seem to like the shows. So, yeah, I guess
yes, because Cafe Otto seems to be one of your you did a live album there, didn't you?
They're very decent there. Like the people treat you nicely. They care about the sound. It's everything I like in a venue, both seeing people and playing. I think it's one of those fluky venues where you get the best of both worlds, really. I saw Ron Geeson there. I haven't seen him for ages. But we knew each other a little bit in the 60s.
Who was that?
Ron Geeson, his crazy character, but he amazingly, which I guess we all dream of, but his dream was he wrote Atom Heart Mother, which Pink Floyd did, as one whole side, and he managed to sort of live on that fairly well.
Yes, my God, that is amazing. So is it?
His stuff is completely and utterly crazy. I mean, I met him in a pub, doing just wonderful off the wall. If you ever get a chance to listen to his earlier, I saw him a few years ago. I hope he's still alive. I mean, he would be probably 6, 7 years older than me, actually. But anyway, he's one of those people that I met who was, again, decent, decent to me, and we messed around a little bit.
Yeah, my God, that's Ron Gleason. Well, I have to try and figure out if he's.
Decent is Geeson.
Oh, right, not right. I'm putting an L in there, aren't I? God damn.
Yeah.
Oh yes, I see. A Scottish musician.
Yeah.
So recently, like I said, you've been very prolific. Have you got any recordings about to come out in the next couple of years? Or have you going to get it in the next couple of months, actually?
Well, the problem is, I mean, I suppose the truth is the problem is age. As you get older, I am doing a couple of shows. I mean, a festival in Chicago asked me to go over, so hopefully we'll do that in August. And I'm going to do a show in Paris in June, beginning of June, which will be with Julie, and I think they will hopefully get a group for me in Chicago, which would be fun. But recording, I mean, the truth is, I don't think one ever stops writing, but the problem really is it's financial now. Like it takes a lot of time, money, and effort to record an album. I've done demos of a large number of tracks, but to actually do it and put it out, it's free afterwards. So almost everything is almost like a vanity project, unless you're aiming for a sort of a single, or unless you're and as you can clearly gather, I'm not capable of doing the influencer thing. I can't even do my own web. Somebody used to do my website when the label was up and running properly. I can't work out how to do it. But I'm amazed that I even still manage to get shows, but it doesn't seem to trouble people. My website hasn't reported anything I've done for a year or two. And Facebook, I absolutely hate it. So I'm disinclined to do that. And I think I've got to find the password in some way, which is on some old computer, and get somebody else to do it.
God, that's annoying. Yes, that is not a good thing to do, is it? We hate that moment, the password. So when you mentioned Julie, is that Julie Wood, who you play a lot with?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, whom I met because she was, around the time I was playing with Current 93, she was, and she'd been playing with them for 17 years or something. I don't know why David stopped using her. I thought that was a mistake, but anyway. So that's where I met her, and indeed a pianist who I often use in recordings and live shows, Maya Elliott.
Right.
Is a good pianist.
Yes.
I met them along with lots of other colourful characters. I mean, David, he's an interesting guy. I mean, we haven't really seen each other for years. I mean, since, since that period. But yeah, he's an interesting guy, and he is responsible for my having met all sorts of interesting people, like musicians and stuff. But yeah, anyway.
So when you just go back to your 80s, you said you recorded some demos. Are they things that you've now re-recorded, and have they gone on to any of those latter?
No, they haven't. They are so 80s, and they are so mind-numbingly they really are very catchy. But the people who sort of I've talked to sort of enjoy them, but they think that it might detract from the kind of world that I'm sort of in now, in terms of the reason people. In other words, I guess the feeling is it might it might put people off,
right?
More than it drag people in. But if you're ever in Colchester, I'm very happy to play.
Yes, well, I'd love to hear your 80s production sounds there. It was a bit stark at times, actually. Well, Trevor Horn, there was a bit of a Trevor Horn production value going on. So yeah, that's that. But basically, you've done all your material that you've got is kind of available via Bandcamp, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that stuff was originally CDs, but and some of them are running out. Like, I mean, Accidental Life and Magic Moments. I don't even know if I have any Magic Moments left. I might have one or two, but the label may have one or two, but they're mainly largely gone, as indeed is Past the Distance. But of course, the latter one, you're used to making like 4,000 like CDs, and then suddenly the market disappears. I mean, initially for Accidental Life, like the cost of the studio and everything is covered instantly because you get pre-orders of a couple of thousand.
Yes.
Then, but the later one, it's gone. Of course, it could be times have changed, but I think I really think more the technology change. The other thing really hit me badly was to add pain to the misery was the website, the email that was associated with the way people bought stuff got hacked, because being naive, I used my eBay was the same password. This is a long time ago, but it was the same password as whole bunches of other things, and so they hacked into that, which was then just called 10-to-1 record. And amazingly, Google wouldn't, Google said it's been hacked, but they wouldn't give it me back. And so what you lose, being innocent anyway, is just all the thousands of contacts that were just stored on it. So then you have to start a new, so then it's 10-to-1 record UK, and you start again. But basically, you're relying on all new people to add their address, I couldn't announce any releases, via email or anything like that.
Yes.
Combination of a lot of different things, but mainly I think that kids didn't want CDs anymore, and it's true. My friend's kids, 10 years ago, if you gave them the CD, they'd download it, toss it in the bin. They didn't want the fluffer.
Yeah.
It was a different thing. Now you get collectors who buy them. It's a different market now.
And funny enough, vinyl seems to become quite an item. I think it's the thing about this object has become artwork in itself, and people like that process, even if they haven't got a record.
That's what Superior Viaduct did. That's what I mean. They've released Past the Distance, as a vinyl, but it's not. It's unlimited. It's just it's just a vinyl release.
Yes. So on that world of releases, I was listening to the single that you brought out a couple of years ago, which was "Stay a Moment More." This is the distance between stones and counting, which are both gorgeous. Are these quite contemporary songs, or are they?
No, the distance between stones I wrote just a year ago. I wrote it actually. I was visiting a friend in Morocco when I wrote it, and that one was inspired because it was one of those things that you did in lockdown. I bought a whole load of parts to make a ukulele. I'd never played one, but I just sort of thought it would be an amusing thing to do, and it wasn't that much to buy.
Yes.
So I bought the parts and I made a ukulele, and it ended up having rather, I was quite proud of myself. It ended up being quite pleasant, and according to Julie, who is a ukulele player, it has a nice tone and everything. Anyway, so I played around with that was the inspiration. So I wrote it on my new ukulele, and so that's all it is. It's just ukulele, and Maya plays piano on it. And maybe I can't remember, but I think Julie may put a little bit of violin on it and plays it as well.
Yes.
But that's one that, as I say, I made like a bunch of demos that I wasn't really, they're not, I haven't had the time to do them. But this one seems simple, and I really love, what Maya did with it, in terms of the piano, and it sort of fitted the mood. And so, yeah, I like that song, but of course it's not, I don't say it's something that, I mean, the kids who like Past the Distance are necessarily going to like. But,
but it's incredibly fascinating stuff, all your material, and I have to say it's been kind of interesting to sort of dip in and sort of hear the whole catalogue. So it's certainly, hopefully, something that more people will do. I'm sure they will, because there's a sort of an interest, isn't there?
Some of the new albums in some countries do quite well, like Accidental Life, oddly enough, is equal, if not slightly more popular in Denmark, and pretty well as popular in France. So Accidental Life has done very well. But again, that was done in a very good studio. Like that.
Yes.
And Vic actually did the was the what you call the sound, the technician, the guy who was on the playing with all the knobs.
That's a slightly technical term, isn't it? Really, playing with the knobs. So, what happened to Vic? Is he still with us, or is he?
One of those things. I suppose I should get in touch. The problem of being in your mid-70s is about once every 4 weeks you get an email saying sorry to be the bearer of bad tidings, but so-and-so healed over. And of course, it's inevitable, because over a lifetime, like hundreds of people, and every so
Yes.
often with their close friends, and that's upsetting. But but it's it's a war. Yeah, it's just like a war, but nobody wins. So yeah. So in that sense, yeah, you've reminded me I should probably sort of find out. I haven't seen him for a number of years, but he's not. It's quite. He lives in Harlow, and it's not an easy place. I don't have a car in England, although I did in Canada, but it's not an easy place to get to. You really need a car to
Yes.
get to it. And I'm better. I like seeing people. So if you ever are in Colchester, by all means, call. I enjoy that a lot. I don't really do the phone so well, and I don't know why, but so yeah, it somehow takes me a lot to get round to getting in touch with people. But
Yeah. Because the people on the album, there's obviously David, there was Paul on drums, there was Kenny on organ. Did
oh
yes.
yeah, he did a great job on that, and that is amazing. People may think it's intentional that the song finishes in that bizarre way, Jerusalem, like where it just goes, but it was the end of the tape, and I was just in my own little world, and Vic was, according to him, madly gesticulating through the sort of sound window,
Yes.
finish the song, and so it's sheer fluke that I actually did manage to finish with, well, just about enough time, but it doesn't quite, the organ, you don't get the last note of the organ.
Yes. It's a
Yeah,
trick.
it was funny. It's a funny thing, like another story Vic told me was a woman broke in to Short Farm Studios and took the, one of the 4-track tapes, and she unraveled it, like she held the end of the tape, and she walked to the top of the building and jumped off. And I don't know why Vic told me that. He said, "Well, it gave me the creeps because it was Jerusalem." It's a weird, weird sort of story. I don't know
Yes.
what year that happened. I mean, I wasn't in England at the time, but it's just, it was when Mushroom was winding down, I think. But it's just one of those weird little stories.
My God, that is a bit strange, isn't it? That is a bit of his moments. And did you ever sort of make some sort of peace with your Pamela and Malcolm, your parents?
Only in the sense that I wrote a song called Malcolm for Malcolm,
Yes.
who was my father, and Pamela, I also wrote a song from, but I can't remember that one as well. Malcolm is quite a nice song, I think, actually. It's sort of got a sort of Bert Janssy picking thing that I
Yes.
think is quite pleasant.
So Malcolm is on Magic Moments.
Yeah, it is.
And what's the song? And what album's the one for your mum on?
Can't remember, and I can't even remember what I called it. Yeah, that was much later, and I don't remember it nearly as well. Malcolm, I think, is quite a decent song, so I guess it stays with me. I mean, I've never played it live. I guess the ones that stay in my head are the ones that I actually play live periodically, but yeah.
Yes. It's weird, isn't it? It's weird. If you could have whispered some to your 16-year-old self starting out in this interesting and journey, is there anything in particular that you might have just told that person, even if they were a bit precocious and ignored you? But I just wondered on certain top tips or things you wished you'd done or not done, or places you wish you'd sort of veered into.
Well, yeah, but then you'd have to change your nature. 16-year-olds are what they are. I mean, the very thing that and I guess that's always true in everything in life. But the things that sabotage you can also be the very things that, in other words, I think I sabotage myself many times in life by, being stubborn or, unreasonable or whatever, but at the same time, it's probably the same thing that gets you off the couch doing stuff, when you are like, I mean, if I hadn't been that way, I probably wouldn't have been willing to put up with 6 months on park benches.
Yes.
Roaming around doors. So who's to know? Yes, I can. You can always see areas when you look back where you might have been more reasonable or might have bowed, or I probably would have done a lot better if I'd continued doing Donna Denny type songs, because I think I have a fair body of, I mean, Tom Jones got played one of my songs once, and there's no way that I would ever have been playing that either for myself, even, but so I like writing songs, I guess, but
Yes.
not necessarily related. I guess the songs that I do are ones that have, for whatever reason, some personal thing for myself.
Yes.
Whereas other things are more like an enjoyable exercise, I guess, like doing cats or something like that. I mean, I can't believe whoever wrote that, and I don't know who did. I know that Ian Jury was asked to and refused, and I understand why.
Yes.
But I can see that it could be enjoyable, to do that, but you wouldn't be emotionally involved, I don't think.
I know, a bit like My Fair Lady, really, isn't it?
Well, that's true, and I do like that, But yes, I admire the way it's done. But yes, you're right. They wouldn't be emotionally involved in that way. And Ian Jury's stuff, of course, is markedly personal. Virtually all of it, I think.
Yes, absolutely. Which is, I suppose you just have to get into a bit more showbiz, actually, wouldn't you?
I love that song he did, My Old Man. Do you know that one?
No.
My Old Man. It's just talked about his drove a car for foreign men. Like, it's just like his dad was a chauffeur, but, had been a bus driver. But anyway, like, I find it a very moving song, like, quite soft
Yes.
for Ian, like that.
Well, I know. He's a tender soul. He's a tender soul. I just noticed we've got a few friends on Facebook in common. You've got Daniela Dax. Do you know her? Was she somebody that came into your consciousness?
She's on my album, yeah. Daniel Dax, yeah. She sings. She on her own, she volunteered, like wanted to do. She wanted to be on Accidental Life. So yes, she's a background singer on Accidental Life, along with Rose McDowell, who was in Strawberry Switchblade, which I understand had a top 10
They had a top 10 hit, yes. Oh, so they're both... Are they on?
They were both in the studio. It was a lot of fun, actually, because I had the luxury, amazingly, like the studio had been gifted to me for a week because somebody, one of those things, it didn't quite go where they hoped, but a couple of months earlier, Graham Coxon had decided to open for a show in London, and which I didn't know him. I have no real idea why he did. I mean, Julie said it was for street cred, but anyway, after that, somebody, a producer, was starting a new studio in that place, which was a really luxurious studio, and so I got to be the first person in it.
Nice, that's fantastic.
And so I invited like a whole bunch of people. Well, what happened is actually Julie thought that Carl Blake would put some fun lead guitar on a couple of tracks.
Yes.
And when I got Carl Blake, Carl said, "Why don't we ask Daniel to come along? Because that would be fun, because he'd been in Lemon Kittens with her or something, some other 80s."
Yes.
And so then Daniel turned up, and then Julie knew Rose McDowell because she'd been in Current 93 a long time ago. So Julie suggested Rose McDowell, and we had a full house of people, and we were just sort of messing around. It was fun. I enjoyed recording.
So which tracks does Danielle appear on?
Oh boy, you'd have to look in the notes.
I'd have to look in the notes, wouldn't I?
I mean, it's a long time ago now. I can't remember when that came out, but it was probably 2006 or something.
2007, yes. Starts with Blood and Bone, Accidental Life, Snowman, Deeply Flawed, Feeling the Benefit. So, yes, Rich Girl with No Trousers. It's all there. Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star.
Yeah.
All very personal songs, aren't they?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star was. I don't know really how that came. That one actually came just because I was messing around on a guitar, and so that one. A lot of songs. Some songs you write first, and then find music to, and other songs, you have music, and then you're sort of looking for something to go with it. And I can't remember exactly why I came up with Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. I think it's because I visited Colchester because of doing a show at the Arts Centre there, and they've got a statue of Bodicea, and they've got a little garden celebrating the right of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star.
Right.
Maybe that's what hit me. I can't remember.
Yes. A nice touch. Well, look, Simon, thank you ever so much for giving me the time for this. This has been amazing. I hope that hasn't been too painful for you.
No, you made it very easy. And please do, by all means, I don't know if you do ever travel, or are you stuck in your room?
No, I do get out of my room occasionally, so that's always nice. But well, Colchester, hey. Well,
I mean, if you're there, or if you're in London, that's fun.
Pop by, have a coffee, yes, and that, dear listener, is the end of the interview. Well, nearly. It's just a bit more showbiz chat at the end there. But anyway, a massive thank you to Simon Finn for giving me the time for that interview. I will put his link to his Bandcamp page in the notes below. This has been the C86 show. David Eastaugh. If you want to contact me, you can on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Just do C86 show. All these shows have been archived. You can find those on Spotify, iTunes, Podbean. Have a great week. Stay safe.